Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for spending time with us today. Today, we're going to talk about something really important. We're going to talk about what makes us all just a little bit different from one another, right? It's the things that make you, uniquely you, wonderfully you, the way God made you. Now, sometimes it can be a little uncomfortable talking about our differences, right? Sometimes there's things about us that we just, maybe we don't like, maybe we wish they were a little different, but it's okay, right? The most important thing to remember today is that just because maybe you look a little different, or your friend looks a little different, or has different customs or different languages, however it makes them, and the difference is, it's, you know what? We can be different and we're all still good, right? Just because someone is different doesn't mean that they're not as good. So here's how we're going to start. If you've got a mirror handy, like right beside you or in the same room, look at it. Or if you've got a piece of paper, maybe try drawing you. Okay? Look at your eyes, for example. What color are they? Are they close together? Are they far apart? Your eyelashes, are they long? Are they short? What about your hair? What color is it? Is it straight? Is it curly? Is it wavy? Is it naturally curly hair? Or do you make it curly? How about the rest of your family? Like, is your hair exactly the same as everybody else in your family? Or is it a little different? What about your ears? Are they like perfectly level, or is like one hang down lower? How about your, what else about your face? Oh, your freckles. Do you have freckles? What about dimples? Like when you smile, do you get the little dents in your face, right? How is it that you look like you? Okay? Think about that for a second. What about you is you? But there's other ways. There's things that make us unique that we can't draw, right? Like the way we talk, right? Now, I don't know how many languages you speak. See if you can tell what I'm saying. Uno, deux, harm, nelia, fem. You got that, right? You understood each and every one of those words. Do you know what I just said? If you guessed that I just counted to 5 in 5 different languages, you are absolutely correct. But I really only speak English. I know a couple words in a couple other languages, and I certainly looked up some new words so that I could at least count to 5 in 5 different languages. But have you ever thought about where all those languages come from? And that's really the thing, the big thing we're going to talk about today, is that despite all the differences in the world, despite all the ways people look different, sound different, act different, all of that was started by God, that He created every language. See, sometimes we think that God stopped creating, like in Genesis, like when He made Adam and Eve, and then that was it. But we already talked a little bit a couple weeks ago about how God had to recreate with the flood, and today we're going to look at how God then created again every language that we have. And if you want to look up the story in the Bible, it comes from Genesis 11. And there we have a story that we sometimes call the Tower of Babel. And here's how that came about, right? There was a time after the flood, many years after the flood, where Noah's descendants all got together and they started living in an area called Shinar, which is in modern day Iraq. And the people then, they had this brand new technology. Like it was the fanciest thing. Like no one ever had this before. It was this new piece of technology. And you might even have some of it in your house. I think first, what's the newest, fanciest piece of technology that you have in your house? Like, did you or your mom or your dad get a new cell phone recently? That might be it, or maybe you're watching this on some kind of a computer of some kind. That's super fancy technology, right? Do you want to know the fanciest piece of technology that they had? The brand new stuff. Like this was cutting edge. You develop this, you're going to be rich. You want to know what the tech was? I found some. I have some here. Check this out. Look at it. Right here. It's this. All right? It's a brick. Right? Just your standard old Nothing fancy. Bricks, right? They figured out you take mud, you add straw, you bake it in the sun, boom, presto changeo, change the world with some brick. Okay? We're going to get that out of the way because it's big and it's heavy. Okay? Actually, I have some smaller ones. These are more fancy modern bricks, right? We got a brick. Here, I'll just set it kind of over here. Right? Bricks. So they got these bricks. And they decided, you know what? We've got these bricks and we should do something special with them. So they started stacking them. And they started building a city. And they started building a tower. And they thought, you know what? If we build this city and we build a tower that stretches up to the heavens, right? Higher than anyone's ever gone before. They thought, then we will be absolutely famous. Famous, right? Think about how people get famous today. I don't know, you probably start a makeup tutorial on YouTube or something, right? But then they thought, no, we build a city, we build a tower, reaches to heaven, we're going to climb the thing up, then we're going to be with God. Do you remember back in Genesis, the beginning, like before people sinned, they were with God. They would hang out with God in the garden. Then they sinned. Then they got kicked out of the garden because because of sin, people can't be with God. And so the people that were in Shinar in that day, they thought, no. We build a tower. We will get to be with God. We will be famous. So they had all this pride. But never once did they go to God and say, hey, God, how would you feel if we built a tower so that we could hang out, so that we could climb up to where you are? No, they didn't. Now, do you ever think about this? How did God know what they were doing? Because eventually, and I know I'm jumping ahead a bit, but as the story goes on, we see that God saw everything they did. Do you ever think, well, how did God see? Well, God sees everything. Everything that happens on this earth he made, he sees. And you might think, well, God's super busy. How does he have time for all of that? God sees it all. And so there they are. They're building. They've got all this pride. They're so excited about what they're doing, so excited about the technology they've developed, thinking that they are the best people ever. And God decides that there's some problems with this. There's some problems because he actually told people what they should do. That they should spread out, that they should fill the whole earth. But yet they weren't. They were all deciding to do their own thing. And so when God saw what they were doing, he wasn't pleased because they were doing it without him and they weren't doing what he asked them to do. So when he saw them speaking the same language and working together on the building plan, instead of spreading out as he had commanded, God stopped them. Now, he didn't come around and just ruin all their bricks. He actually started creating again because he created all these languages. And so when people started all speaking different languages, they couldn't communicate with each other anymore. Have you ever had that? Have you ever been in a situation like that where you realize nobody understands what you're talking? If you've traveled to countries where they speak other languages, you might have had this experience. Or if you've just come to Canada from another language and you didn't know English very good, and you sit down in class and you realize, you can't really communicate all that well. Even one time, I went to Northern Ireland where English is the main language, and we didn't always understand each other perfectly, right? And you think, but we all speak English. But sometimes, right? But we can, just because we're saying the same words doesn't mean we're meaning the same thing. And so God gave them all different languages, and that stopped their building plan. They couldn't work together anymore because they didn't understand what each other was saying. And so they abandoned the city. They abandoned the tower. They just walked away from it, stopped building. They just walked away. And each group that spoke a different language, some went here, some went there, some went over here, they're spread out all over, which was God's plan. And if they had just followed God's plan, maybe we'd all today speak the same language. But let's not think bad of them because they speak language. It's God's beautiful work of creation in giving us all these different languages. And the consequence of Babel certainly was that people groups got scattered to different parts of the earth. And as they became separated, they developed their own customs, developed their own language and understanding of things. And as years passed, these languages, the people groups just got more and more diverse, more and more different. Different all kinds of physical and cultural different expressions. And so instead of giving God glory for the difference between us, sometimes sometimes we judge people when they're different. And it's kind of like, but what we can easily forget is that God has made every person, even though different, all of us have the same intended purpose, which is to what? Praise Him, to know Him, to glorify Him. Regardless of our differences, we were all created by Him, and He made us the way we are. He makes you, you. He makes me, me. He makes our friends just the way they are. And so it's important that we remember what we have in common, even though different. That we are to praise and worship God. And that God sees all of our unique differences. And that's kind of the heart of the lesson in all of this. Even though we can say, yeah, God created all the differences, God also sees all the differences. And we shouldn't forget that either. God sees you and how you are special and how you are unique. And God sees me and sees my friends and sees everybody else. Now, as far as seeing goes, do you think you see as good as God? In fact, as you've been watching this video, did you see all the different animals in it? Now, some of them are more obvious, but I'm just thinking, as I look around, do you see them all? There are 12 of them in all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we have 12 animal stickers in total around the room, right? Maybe you need to go back and watch again to see if you see them in various parts, but they're all hidden in here in this video like little Easter eggs to see, do we notice? Well, God sees everything. God is so powerful that nothing that happens in His creation is out of His sight. Nothing happens in the world He made that He isn't aware of. And that kind of brings us back to our memory verse for this month. And so I want us to look at it again. And Jeremiah 32:17 says this, "Ah, sovereign Lord, you have made the heavens and the earth. By your great power and outstretched arm, nothing is too hard for you." We read later in the New Testament where it says that every God created from one family every unique culture, language, people group that there is. God made them all. That's all within His power, and He sees them all. That's all within His power too. You think of all the different languages on the planet, all of them. There's so many. And yet, what do they all have in common? They were all made by God. And God knows them all. And regardless of what language starts praying to God, God understands it. Regardless of what the language is that starts praising God, God appreciates it. God is worshipped in nearly every language, and He knows them all. And so that's just another cool thing about God to be thinking about this week. Thanks for checking in with us. Spend this week just reflecting on how God has made you unique, and praise Him for it, and thank Him that no matter what you do, whenever you might feel like no one notices you or no one sees you, God sees you because He loves you very much. Have a great week.